The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Big Ben Haslar presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Haslar. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are in the case of The People versus A View to a Kill, a 1985 James Bond movie starring Roger Moore as Agent 007, who must foil a wealthy industrialist plot to establish a computer chip monopoly by flooding Silicon Valley. For those of you unfamiliar with these court proceedings, we are here to determine that the film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are being considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Sherman, Matt Sherman, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
I object, Your Honor.
All right.
Oh, sorry, just being proactive. Just being proactive. Yes.
Okay. You only get 3 more, so, use them wisely.
Ladies and gentlemen, A View to Kill so horrific, the opening statement must come from Kevin Spacey's disgraced President Frank Underwood from House of Cards. Don't deny it, you love it. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense will attempt to present this film, A View to Kill, as glorious escapist entertainment, which is true only if you can escape the theater. When they aired View to a Kill for me on Air Force One, I walked out on the second act, despite being 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. In my home state of South Carolina, we call it a faux bagger, when you and your date wear 2 bags on your heads to avoid seeing the film under any circumstance. But if the film burns the bags off your date's face, she'll at least jump into your arms thinking it's a horror show when she spies the cold, wasted visage of Roger Moore. As my friend Nancy Reagan said at the premiere, don't say no to drugs. Roger's face brings instant sobriety. Eon Productions was ready to replace Roger Moore with a number of candidates, including diminutive funny man Dudley Moore, auteur director Michael Moore, slightly less disgusting in 1985 than he is today, and because she had the legs for it, Mary Tyler Moore. Yet only savvy fans know about the dark horse candidate Sir Thomas More. But the former Lord High Chancellor of Great Britain had died in May of 1532, and so was unavailable. But, ladies and gentlemen, had they exhumed his rotted corpse, it would have improved upon Roger Moore's allegedly living body. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, I invite small children, the vulnerable, and the elderly to leave this podcast, for I'm about to share 3 words of fear. Mr. Grace Jones. Mr. Grace Jones was so repellent in View to Kill, so bad personally, professionally, and sartorially, that the world believed my friend Bill Clinton when he said, I did not have sexual relations with that supposed woman. Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution requests a continuance so that I must swallow 2 bottles of Tylenol because A View to a Kill makes us sick. Thank you, and may God bless America with better films than A View to a Kill.
Swallow them away. We're still proceeding. But what is your relationship to Robin Williams, out of curiosity?
We were both very depressed after watching A View to a Kill.
That tracks. Thank you very much. And appearing on the defense is Commander McNess. You may present your opening statement.
Your Honor, I'm not here to defend the pop cultural fourth wall breaking jokes of the Moore era or the general frivolity of the Moore era. It was what it was, and it was fun. So I'm not here to defend the usage of California Girls in the pre-credits sequence, which may in turn undercut 75% of the prosecution's argument. Now, around the film's 20-minute mark, Moore delivers the line, "There's a fly in his soup." Now, one would expect a throwaway delivery of the line, but more in this case is grave and downbeat. And it's at this precise moment the movie has me in its grip. And see, this is one of the things I think that A View to a Kill does so well, using the frivolous as an entry point to the dramatic. Moore's light-hearted Bond has sensed the assassin is a serious threat, and for that alone I want to see how this film plays out. And this is a film about the pleasures of observing, or viewing, if you will. In Zorin and Mayday, we observe the light and the dark, the pale and angelic placed against the fearsome, and regarding the fearsome, even when Mayday is in the background, out of focus, she is presence personified. I defend A View to a Kill in so much as I feel it has so much to offer, in entertainment and in how it plays with its deceptively straightforward formula. This is a film where an airship floating above San Francisco Bay is considered as deeply enthralling as any car or ski chase, and for that alone I will love the film. The villain's conspiracy to corner a market is not especially complex or new or layered in subterfuge. Moore's Bond walks around a range of glamorous locations gathering clues, and the horse conspiracy may feel beside the point. But we are gathering one piece of ominous portent after another, not simply regarding Zorin's greater conspiracy, but the psychotic character of Zorin himself. A View to a Kill does ominous very well. Your Honour, I do think this is a classic James Bond film, a classic of its type, but that doesn't mean you need to like it. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater either.
Thank you, Mr. McNess. And thank you for the Snickers bars. They won't sway the verdict, but they are still appreciated. And with that, Mr. Sherman, you may present your first exhibit.
Your Honor, the defense has presented my first exhibit. Thank God Mayday is out of focus for most of the film. Yeesh.
Oh, God.
My goodness. So, without further ado, or shall I say, meeting adieu with a view to a kill. Ha ha ha!
No.
Okay, I won't.
No,
say
we
it.
shouldn't
I
say
won't
that.
say it. I proudly yet ashamedly present, drumroll please, the top 5 thought crimes of A View to a Kill. Number 5, Stacy, Scream Machine, Sudden! The poor woman spends half the film looking like an Edvard Munch canvas, not even a good one like his vampire puberty. You guessed it. Rather, it's the Scream. At least she won the most screamiest geologist prize at our nation's annual Geological Scream Queen Awards. I blame the View to a Kill screenwriter, ladies and gentlemen, who kept typing over and again, typing hard return 3 times. Stacy shrieks, James! Aloud, then hard return 3 times, many, many times, because they're obviously getting paid per page. Number 4, and I'll try and limit these to 20 or 30 objections. The breathing from a tire stunt for James Bond. Ugh. The screenwriters must have been smoking more than mere radials when they came up with this doozy. At least they cut the line of dialogue where Bond surfaces and shouts, "Don't tread on me." Number 3, ladies and gentlemen, lack of diversity. You expect me to believe that San Francisco has one homeless person and zero gay people? Even for the 80s, that's a strong lack of representation. At least make the homeless guy at City Hall in the movie gay or something. Number 2, the homeless man's drunken double take. Whose idea was this at the pitch meeting? In 3 subsequent Moore Bond films, A Spy Who Loved Me, Moonraker, and Fear Eyes Only, a drunk does a double take. When? Bond's exotic car exits the ocean. When Bond's exotic gondola drives through Venice. When Bond exotically skis. Calm down, Mr. Defense. I said exotically, not erotically. Skis atop a partygoer's chalet table. Oh, yes, I can hear the pitch meeting now, can't you? Hey, the 4th time's the charm. Let's have the drunk guy do a double take when, wait for it, a man rescues a woman from a burning building by using, wait for it, a ladder. And the number one crime of A View to a Kill, Bond's cover name. Instead of a cool cover name like he always has, like David Somerset or Mark Hazard, Zorin's idiot henchwoman says to Bond, "Mr. St. John Smith," and Bond corrects her as, "St. John Smythe, my dear." So Bond's alias is after Jill Boom Boom St. John, the other stupidest Bond girl besides Stacy, Scream Machine, Sutton, and Major Dexter Smythe, who commits suicide to drive the plot of the prior Bond film Octopussy. This alias therefore hints two things. Together, that Bond will stupidly kill himself during the film, an idea not fully realized till last year's No Time to Die, which unfortunately means what? We have to watch another 90 minutes of this stupid Bond movie, 90 minutes which feel more like sitting through Wagner's Ring Cycle for 10 hours, turning my theater popcorn bags and yours into air sickness bags. If I can have a continuance, okay. I think I have to kill myself.
Well, I'd like to throw it to the defense. You may kill yourself on your own time, sir. Would you like to rebuttal any of these 5 points?
I'm waiting for the crimes. I suppose when it comes with Stacy, yes, the scream is sometimes shrill, but she's thrown into danger on a number of occasions, and his name is James, so what else is she going to call out? The homeless man, well, you know, it's one guy, but it's one guy. It's a little bit of representation, and I think it's rather nice that this little homeless man in that moment looks up aspirationally to Bond, lifting Stacy to safety. St. John Smith, I'm no offence taken, Your Honour. No objection taken, Your Honour.
All right, and then none will be given. Mr. Sherman, you may present your second exhibit.
I will, and Andrew, just because you have that smooth and smarmy Australian voice doesn't mean I won't object later. But nice try. Let's face it, folks, A View to a Kill is as gritty and realistic as Middle Earth. When you walk the Golden Gate Bridge, you see harbor seals below the tower, not Zoran's body or exploding blimps. You know, coming across a positive review of this film on paper, I read it with my pants down in the smallest room in my house. It began in front of me and soon was behind me. The few fools who like this film are always egging me on, pressing me on, pushing me on. I call them Roger Morons. Don't be a moron. Find this film. But let's give some more specific examples. I mean, this film has one of the most incredible villains. As said in the film, Max Zorin speaks 5 languages, all of them fluently, and all of them with an impenetrable Brooklyn accent. A View to a Kill is root canal without anesthesia. The stenchiest of all stenchy Bond films that broke the internet with the award-winning YouTube video titled Everything Wrong with A View to a Kill in 18,000 hours or less. You all have seen this film. Do I even need to make more statements? It's horrible.
Mr. McNess, particularly Christopher Walken, do you think he was a strength or a hindrance to this film?
Oh, well, I was waiting for him to speak in his fluently in other languages, and I don't think that ever occurred, but that's right, I'm here to defend A View to a Kill.
That's because he wasn't even fluent in English.
Well, a slight objection, Your Honour. Look, I really can't say enough good things about Max Zorin. I mean, here's a supervillain who's amused at the outlandishness and the sheer awfulness of his plans. He's sort of taking part in his own personal joke, and he really doesn't care whether anyone else is going to endorse that joke or not. He's this angelic-looking villain, and yet he's dead-eyed, he's self-amused. There's something unreachable about him. He's genuinely creepy. And, you know, we may say that there's a certain Walken style, but that stop-start speech rhythm suggests that he's calculating 5 different things at once. He may be thinking of it in 5 or 6 different dialects. And then there's that sort of nonchalant strut. Look, this guy's a corporate monster. And his detached manner and his business acumen work hand in hand. You know, he is also the only Bond villain to receive his own disclaimer, securing him as the corporate Bondian psychopath to beat. You know, he's this former KGB agent who doesn't give a damn about politics. That's lovely, but he wishes simply to become the world's biggest businessman. He's the individualist from hell. Look, I really can't say enough good things, but I would have liked to have heard him speaking in a few other languages, I must admit. But
I object, Your Honor. I must object most strenuously. The actual disclaimer made for the film, and I quote, Neither the name Zorin nor any other name or character in this film is meant to portray a real company or actual person who plans to flood Silicon Valley by having his Nazi genetic mutation henchwoman ride a shopping cart full of high explosives into a mine atop a geologic fault during the spring tide for maximum effect.
Well, maybe they should just have renamed him to Mr. Macrosoft or something like that to dodge that bullet.
Jeez.
Mr. Sherman, you may present your next exhibit.
Well, consider the fabulous walk-ons in any James Bond film. The very first film, Dr. No, we just celebrated the 60th anniversary. It'll be happening this October 5. That was the date of its release in the UK. And it made Sean Connery and made Ursula Andress. And where License to Kill, for example, is the first Bond big film for Oscar great Benicio Toro. And Tomorrow Never Dies is the first big walk-on role for Downton Abbey star Hugh Bonneville. A View to a Kill is a big walk-on for, wait for it, Dolph Lundgren, who looks like he just ate the eye of the tiger. Fact, Grace Jones's and Tanya Roberts' screams, James, were real because they unfortunately had seen the dailies and rushes from their work. Fact, Cubby Broccoli planned to can the 114-year-old Roger Moore 4 films earlier after The Spy Who Loved Me, but he was himself growing kind of forgetful and senile in his later years. Fact, Roger Moore turned 114 during filming so long in the tooth, as someone put it online, he grew tusks with an eye job that gives him the pie-eyed blank stare of a zombie. So I don't know about Zorin's 50-mile stare, but I know that Roger Moore had a stare that said nothing but Botox. Look, I don't want to sound ageist, but one reviewer said the MI6 trip to the Ascot races looked like a day out from the old folks' home. And that's why Alison Doody in her next film, slept with Connery. I mean, it was a step up to sleep with someone else who could pass only for her grandfather. My God. I guess MI6 built Zorin's airship because it's able to sneak up on Stacey Sutton without being noticed. I mean, that's where Elon Musk stole his silent but deadly Tesla technology from. But at least, let's face it, folks, Max and Dr. Mortner there in the film solved that old cliche. You know the one. When you see Bond, just kill him. Don't play around. Don't light and hold sticks of dynamite in your hand. That would be stupid, right? And thankfully, the early draft script was changed, my friends, when Wile E. Coyote was blown apart by the Roadrunner. You know, the best thing about the film is the deleted scenes. I don't know if you heard about those. On DVD, you see Mayday jumping off the pinnacle of the Eiffel Tower, but she's dashed to pieces on its structure because unless she jumps thousands of feet through the air like a Marvel superhero, she'll be unable to avoid the bottom of the tower's parabolic legs. If you look at the Eiffel Tower, you can't jump off the top. I'm going to say one last thing, but I think it sums up the argument. The Goldfinger has the top Rotten Tomatoes score of all the Bonds. I'm sure you knew that. 99%. Cinematic perfection, even watching it today, nearly 60 years later. But A View to a Kill has, you guessed it, the lowest Rotten Tomatoes rating of all the Bonds. Currently, I looked it up today, 38%. I say currently 38% because the other 62% of critics are missing all presumed suicides. The only people, my friends, who like this film, like my defense, Andrew, must call it a guilty pleasure. If you consider serial killing and mass murder guilty pleasures too. And then in any case, it's guilty. That's the point. Guilty.
Objection, Your Honor.
I object to your objection.
Oh.
I overrule your objection to the objection. I want to hear the first objection.
I'm sorry, I was just being objective.
Your Honor, this is no guilty pleasure of mine. And let's just take this a step back or two to this kidnapping of Stacey by an airship. My goodness, this is one of the most frustrating things for me and someone who likes and admires A View to a Kill. A bomb has gone off, first of all, so I would assume that Stacey would be somewhat deaf in that instance, and she's cast eyes on a man that she perhaps loves at this point in time, but who she presumes is dead. There he is. She runs down towards him. It's all wonderfully operatic. And then there's the airship behind her, and it sweeps her up, or Zorin sweeps her up, however it works anyway. But she's deaf. Give the girl a break.
And how do you respond to Roger Moore's age? That is a very common complaint with this film.
He was 80. He wasn't 114. I find this so...
Very close.
No, Look, I think that the age thing, now, this is one of those things as well. You know, people who criticize A View to a Kill will say, well, they don't really make any explicit references to his age, but it's implicit. It's implicit in the film because here they are, they position him against a younger villain and the villain's henchwoman. They're noticeably younger, and so it sets up this interesting dynamic in the film where Bond is sort of past his prime, but ultimately he proves his worth by the conclusion of the film. But I don't know, do people not like seeing Bond on the back foot as much as he is in A View to a Kill, with the supervillain, with the younger supervillain telling him that he's out of his depth, and if he's the best that MI6 have, they'll try to cover up his embarrassing competence. Look, I think there's a really nice undercurrent within A View to a Kill, and Bond does really well. Thank you.
And Mr. Sherman, did you want to rest your case on that last point?
I want to rest it on this because I want to see the other side. And I've tried as hard as I could. In a review praising this film, The Guardian posted that there's Grace's May Day, Grace Jones's May Day. You ready for this? Quote, perhaps the greatest Bond girl because she brings rare diversity and agency to the role and because she's just so gloriously, utterly unusual. Quote, her sex scene with Moore is one of the strangest ever filmed. Now that's high praise, isn't it, for a film?
Sure. And that's where you're resting?
Strange
Sex scene?
I'm going to rest it on this. Genuflex, the runaway nun from Catholic school. Oh, wait, wrong movie. There are millions of words already online and in print about that opening ski scene that the defense tried to dodge with his clever and well-thought-out opening statement. Millions of words about the opening ski scene with the Beach Boys music. But the laughable back projection that you can see in every scene is damning enough. So may the film be damned. So say I.
Ooh, well, thank you, Mr. Sherman. Mr. McNess, you may rebut that point or present your first exhibit.
I would simply rebut the point to say that it was only a semi-thought-out comment from me regarding California Girls. It wasn't fully thought out. But there you are. You know, maybe I should just refer back to California Girls and the usage of it. I think, you know, we were seeing, by the time of A View to a Kill, we'd had 14 James Bond films. And they were coming out, if not once a year, then once every 2 years. They were a part of popular culture on a constant basis. And so they themselves were making their little pop cultural references, and hence California Girls. You know what? I wasn't offended by it. It just felt par of the course. They haven't kept up with it. Once they introduced Timothy Dalton, they sort of removed that kind of stuff. But with Moore, he could pull it off. It was well done.
And did you have an exhibit you would like to present?
Yes. Let me... I have, in a way, had some of my exhibits already presented just through objecting to...
It tends to happen a lot of times.
My evil plans work.
Let me just say this. I do
the theme
like...
song.
Oh, the theme song. Well, you know, I guess the theme song is one of the things. You know, it went to number one and it seemed to be well received, unlike the film itself that had a very mixed response. The actual song itself had a glorious run. And in fact, people who dislike A View to a Kill will say, well, hey, it does have one legacy, or two legacies. One, it was Roger Moore's final James Bond film. And two, it had a rip-snorting theme song. But let me see, I would... perhaps just like to make mention. I have so many notes.
I object, Your Honor. There's no making mentions on this podcast.
We make many mentions.
We mention all the time.
You know what? I just want to say that I think that retrospectively, this film was taking us towards the Timothy Dalton years very effectively. You know, this is a film where an ominous, almost pessimistic tone eventually overtakes that sort of playful and escapist one. And so in the mine sequence, we see Zoran ruthlessly murder his entire workforce. And this, back then was rather shocking. Today, we might say par of the course, but then it was a truly shocking scene in a Bond film. Now, some people would say it was shocking because 2 hours ago they were listening to California Girls on the soundtrack, and then what the hell? Now we're seeing this mass murder. What's going on? But hey, I just think that A View to a Kill captures that sort of emergent 80s neoliberal, debauched capitalism that was really starting to infiltrate our culture. And there we go. It's escapism, but it had that dark edge. So well done to A View to a Kill.
Mr. Sherman, would you care to rebut? This film is seen as darker, especially compared to Moore's other films.
Well, I'm not sure it was ruthless to kill all his workforce. I think it just saved him a lot of overtime. There were no pension benefits at the time. I'm not sure how I'd even rebut the ruthless neo-capitalism of the 1980s. But I'd say this. They had to go with Tim Dalton in the next film because he was thin. Roger's gut. Oh, my God. Did you ever watch this jacket that Roger wears throughout all the San Francisco scenes? It's like half the film. His gut is half covered by a zippered or semi-zippered leather jacket, only zipped off halfway because it looked like his gut was going to explode from too many rounds of James Bond beer pong. I mean, A View to Kill should have kept its original November 2 release date as it feasts on All Souls. I noticed the defense didn't talk about the plot, and that's key. A View to a Kill's plot, of course, is a thinly disguised ripoff. We all know this. He'll admit this. Goldfinger's plot. And at least Goldfinger wanted to make Fort Knox radioactive, so I'd have some place to immolate myself after viewing the film. And of course, my friends Max Zorin planned to flood Silicon Valley instead, which would at least destroy Amazon, Google, and Facebook, if a bit proactively for the 1980s neoliberal capitalism. But this will also flood Napa Valley. Have you thought about that? Therefore, San Franciscans will have no place to drink themselves to death after watching Roger Moore's crotch almost stain the top of their beloved Transamerica Pyramid. The rumor mill, I looked at them on the internet, says the penthouse corner of the pyramid even today bears a plaque which reads, Roger Moore's pee-pee swept by here at high speed in 1985. Exhibit B and C, Roger Moore's crotch.
I will pass it to Mr. McNess now. Did you have any further exhibits to present, sir?
Oh, Your Honor, I can only simply say that I think that with Roger Moore's jacket there might have been a slight bulge, but I do have to pick up Mr. Sherman on the level of exaggeration.
You think I'm not exaggerating enough?
No, I'm saying rein it in. But no, I don't know what to say. I mean, films and crotch jokes, yes, A View to a Kill went to that level very briefly. I mean, to me, that was just one other element in which Paul Bond is sort of undermined in the context or through the proceedings of this film. But again, ultimately, Bond pulls through. And which is why I think on some underlying level, the film is deeply satisfying.
I find the film deeply satisfying. Don't you?
Did.
Of course, because it's so horrid. How horrid is it, you ask? Mystery Science Theater 3000 just airs it alone without any commentary or riffing whatsoever. And afterward, viewers need to watch all 24 hours of A Christmas Story just to brainwash themselves into feeling good again. I mean, let's admit it, it's bad. And I think the defense has admitted that. And I don't want to use hyperbole. I understand what you're saying. But look, Tanya Roberts, Stacey Sutton, that's an inspired casting choice. It must have been from her astonishing box office success, The Beastmaster.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's enough. That's enough for me.
Yeah, it's enough for me, too.
Mr. McNess, did you have any further exhibits, or would you like to rest your case?
Oh, Your Honor, I just think that the prosecution is growing more and more desperate. No pun intended. I can only simply say that the film, for what it is very, very good. I simply, in a way, I feel like Zorin. As I sit here, I feel like Max Zorin himself, because he too was unaffected by the goading that was coming at him, more accusing him of being a psychopath. And he would just chuckle it off with the flick of a wrist. I feel in this very moment, I myself am Max Zorin, but I, for one, would never murder my entire workforce.
Nor us in this courtroom, I hope. And you would like to rest your case there?
I would, thank you, Your Honor.
Very well. Both sides have rested their cases. Mr. Sherman, you may present your closing statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, I looked up Rotten Tomatoes in the dictionary, and I saw an A View to Kill poster there. There's a film that's shown in crisis centers, so the despondent can see there's things worse than suicide. Not a good film. Christopher Walken's hair is blonde in the film. Why? Because much like the film itself, he is a product of Nazi evil geniuses. That's why the UN recently declared A View to a Kill a war crime. At the end of the film, where it says James Bond will return, I shouted at the screen, I highly doubt it. What more can one say about a film that's so bad? It might just be good, but you have to hold it guilty for the right reasons. The defense has made a tremendous case that the film is sanguine and cheerful and glorious and wonderful and has magnificent performances. I'm telling you the truth. I filed an amicus brief for the Supreme Court to get them to reconsider showing this film. It's a crime. And I sent a detailed letter to Joe Biden and Donald Trump to let them know my wishes. We've got to take this seriously. I mean, we're all about holding bad films guilty. Let's do our jobs. I encourage this court to find A View to a Kill guilty of being what it is, a horrible Bond film, the worst of the batch.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Although we do outrank the Supreme Court, there's a very obscure clause that we got slipped through Congress. Mr. McNess, you may present your closing statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Look, what we're talking about here is the ultimate 80s rendering of the James Bond universe. What with its corporate supervillain, its insanely strong henchwoman, its Duran Duran song, the tougher edge to the action, the Cold War complexity, and so on. And yet its qualities are not really trapped within the decade. Furthermore, A View to a Kill demonstrated that a foreboding, nihilistic edge could be threaded through a Bondian romp. It reinforced also how some especially creative casting of the villainy could supply a formula flick with an unexpectedly distinct flavour. And last but not least, the film reminds us, I think better than any of the other Bond films to date, that rewarding variations on the formula need not always be especially obvious. Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, Mr. Rob Maynard, and Mr. Unhappiest in the saddle, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. Right this way. For my money, the party doesn't start until you see Christopher Walken.
All right, everyone. Another Bond movie. We're gonna get through them all.
We're gonna do all of them. I love it.
Do we really have to?
Yes,
Oh, yes.
Ryan. With
Bond
that
movies,
attitude,
Bond
we're gonna
movies,
do Never Say Never Again, too.
Well, we keep getting the best Bond experts in the world. I mean, we do. We got Matt, we got Andrew, we got Jeremy, we got Frida. They keep coming on the show.
Yes, exactly.
I'm game, but I said I'd never say never again, so.
That's true. Now, you are not allowed in this room, Matt. We're going to close that door, bailiff. So what are your thoughts? Ryan, what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, I only heard half of the case, but so I don't
Which
know
half?
if I'm stepping on anybody's toes. I heard the defense.
Oh, that was the
But-
good half.
Okay. Great.
Oh, jeez.
I
He
figured
can't
as
hear
much.
me. He's in the other room.
Yeah. What's all that about? This movie, easily in the bottom rung of James Bond movies for me. It's not as bad as Octopussy, but it's I would say maybe Die Another Day is better than this, not by much.
No.
I know it's not the rosiest outlook I've ever had, but the whole thing that really got me throughout this movie was really Roger Moore's age. like comparing this to like Mission Impossible Fallout, where every single shot that doesn't involve Roger Moore's face is done by a double, and he was the same age as Tom Cruise was when he made Fallout. That's astounding to me. I cannot even begin to reconcile that in my brain.
Well, that's because Tom Cruise got all the photons now, and he takes his vitamins.
That's true. That is true. He does have his e-meter. Yeah. But it really bugged me that he was making it with someone young enough to be his granddaughter. I found it very off-putting. And it didn't make it any better that Tanya Roberts is very much a non-entity in this film. Like, she brings absolutely nothing to it. Not that the role is really asking for anything, but whatever they're asking for, she cannot deliver. I'm just vamping here. What do you guys think?
I love Ryan's conservative sensibilities. There's something about the Moore movies that they just don't bug me the way they bug other like big James Bond fans, right? Like you, or it's just like in obviously we know Matt loves the Bond movies, and just the way he was able to tear the throat out of this one, it really kind of made me stop and think, like, oh, geez, maybe this movie is bad, But I thought Andrew made a very strong case as well for it, because I think you just, at this stage of the Bond game, if you're watching it as part of the continuum, I think you're along for the ride. You're kind of used to Bond retreading that same territory, like he said, in a way that's not too bad. Like, yes, it is kind of redolent of Goldfinger, but like to me, that's not really a negative. I think you have a lot of interesting things happening in this movie. Roger Moore's age doesn't really bug me that much, especially I think if you were to watch this movie in a vacuum. Like, if this is the first Bond movie you were to ever watch, I don't think you walk away hating it, scratching your head. I think it's something that happens in franchises, I think this maybe was a victim of franchise fatigue or something, It's more of like a Star Trek nemesis.
A victim of Roger Moore fatigue. Actually.
Well, a victim of Roger Moore fatigue. And Roger Moore has said he wasn't particularly happy with it. And as we constantly see in this show, whenever actors come out saying they don't like movies, it seems to give much broader license to the critical public to really lay into that movie. And I don't think the actors always have the best judgment of their work,
But see, that's the thing. If this was the first James Bond movie I ever saw, I wouldn't watch any more James Bond movies. And it doesn't matter how old or young I was, I would not do that.
You can't get yourself into that mindset. You wouldn't know.
Oh, I would know. I would know. I have a very attuned sense of skill.
Maybe. Well, Maynard, you're the biggest Bond guy in the jury. What do you got for us?
This is one of my favorite. This is actually one of my favorites. That doesn't mean it's good.
Okay, that's fair.
That's the problem. Is like,
but
this is comfort food Bond for me. This is peak nostalgia. It definitely was one of the first ones I'd ever seen, like on TBS on TV. And like, I mean, it's through kids' eyes, right? All this skiing, he's killing these dudes on skis, like that's super cool. And then the music hits, and you're like, awesome. The strengths to it, I think, were really brought up by Andrew. I think Walken is one of the best villains, especially of the Moore era. I think he's such a vibrant character that I think measures up to Bond. Like, you believe him being a threat. You believe he can come up with a plan that works.
And to interrupt, I think it contrasts the age dynamic, like Andrew said. So I thought that was a good point to kind of cover up for Moore being old and Zoran being so young and
he's
virile,
the Ubermensch. He's the Ubermensch. He was created by a Nazi for the KGB.
Oh, God. Talk about great casting. That guy looks like a Nazi scientist. You don't need anyone to tell you he's a Nazi scientist. You just see like, that's a Nazi scientist. I've seen those guys before.
Exactly. That's them. Another strength, I wish this had been brought up, defense bringing up, but Patrick McNee. Patrick McNee is one of the best parts of this whole movie. Sir Godfrey Tibbett, who was forced to be like his chauffeur in all the beginning. As a kid, I didn't know who he was, but I always thought that part was funny. Growing up and knowing the Avengers TV show so well, I love that Patrick McNee gets to hang out with Bond. Diana Rigg got to, and now Patrick McNee gets to too.
It is a bit jarring, though, the way they kind of kill him, I gotta say. It's a bit of a tonal shift.
It's brutal. That's the thing about this movie. So California Girls was brought up. but it's not like Bond is playing like a couple like Octopussy. Bond would have like skied by a boombox, hit play, and California Girls would have come out. Something within the movie would have happened. This is editing. This is the score is putting California Girls there. I just think it's jarring how it suddenly goes back to that bump 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 bump, but like right after. But I like the California Girls. Weaknesses. Moore is so old, and all of that's unbelievable. Like, okay, if he's going to be that old, like maybe don't have him hang from a fire truck and stuff like that, and do the whole Blues Brothers like jump the bridge.
I believe you mean don't have his stunt double hang from a fire truck.
Yes, precisely, absolutely. And I do also have to give credit to the prosecution. I can't stand Tanya Roberts. All her shrieking is really, really horrible and makes your ears want to bleed. But I also don't see Tanya Roberts as the Bond girl of this movie. Mayday is. Grace Jones is the Bond girl and the henchman. And that's what makes, I think Mayday is one of the best Bond girls because of that. She plays that dual role, and you almost never see the henchman turn. Like Jaws did it, but most of the time it doesn't happen. Bond girls betray the evil villain for Bond quite a bit. And so to mix them both, Grace Jones is definitely one of the highlights of this film for me. And the theme song. Love the theme song.
The theme song is amazing. I sat through the entire end credits just to listen to it again. When all I had to do is click back on my remote and just go back to the beginning. Nope, I just let it play out because I liked it that much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love the like the glow in the dark, like blacklight stuff in the opening video for this.
Yeah, it's not a bad opening sequence as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. Schlenzo, any thoughts before you lock in, or Ryan?
No, I do want to agree. I think for me, where Matt's case stumbled was going so hard against Grace Jones. I thought she was a strength. I thought she was strong, sexy, vibrant, very different. And
this is
again,
only the second use of pubic hair. Pubic hair you can see in any Bond
movie. According to IMDb. And again, too, this is just another one of those things where I think people might have colored their view of the situation based on Roger Moore's comments about not liking Grace Jones. You know what I mean? Like, again, I said it before, I'll say it again. When actors come out against a project, people just go much harder against it than I think is warranted. You said this. I know, and I'm saying it again because it bears repeating. Okay. So anyway, so great case. I appreciate the passion and the humor, but also that Matt brought up very salient points. He was funny. They were very good points, but I think Andrew did enough to kind of deflect that and point out the merits of this movie and how you kind of just be along with it, be along for the fun, because everything you need in a Bond movie is there, and it has some interesting messages. Again, particularly the clashing of Moore's age versus Walken's youth. I thought that put that issue to bed for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say not guilty.
All right, Ryan.
Well, I hate to support an argument I didn't hear, but seeing as how I only heard one side of the case, I have to just basically go with my gut, and I do not care for this movie. I'm amazed that this is the second time I've seen it because I can remember nothing about it except for what I have in my notes. But I cannot stand this movie, so I'm going to have to go guilty.
Okay. I think this movie is not good. Like there's too
damn right, brother.
Moore's too old. Tanya Roberts is too annoying, and so the most of the load has to be carried by Walken, Mayday, and the plot to Floods San Francisco, which I think is a good plot. But we're here to determine if it's bad, and I think there's enough with that, and especially that theme song on top, that edges it just out of bad. Is it one of the worst Bond movies? It's definitely in the second half. It's in the lower tiers of the Bond movies. But it's fun, and I think Walken and Grace Jones salvage it. So I'm going to go not guilty. So we should get out there and tell that really, really very handsome judge.
Ah, there you go.
Very handsome.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of The People versus A View to a Kill, we find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie. I didn't like it either, but
The verdict is so rendered. But this film should go out on a high note. So there should be no never say never again or anything like that. Understood? Court is adjourned.
We'll see.
This is Christopher Walken reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Matt Sherman, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
You bet. I mean, just like the president is considering expanding the Supreme Court from 9 to 16 judges, I feel a little railroaded, and I'm hoping that the podcast will expand to 27 or 30 jurors, because most would have agreed with me that this film sucks. Roger Moore's age is short for rage. That's what I'm feeling, rage. No, I can't believe I lost twice on this show, and I was prosecuting and defense. I can't stand this.
We'll have you back a third time. Push the movie out a higher window. And here comes Andrew McNess. Excuse me, McNess, scooch closer. Could we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
Oh, you certainly could. You certainly could. You know, this is a recurring thing. I hear people saying, you know, A View to a Kill, the worst or one of the worst Bond films, and then all of a sudden people take a closer look and there you go. They're like, no, it just pulls across the line. And look, I feel reinforced. I feel supported. I feel so happy for the film. Look, I'm most appreciative for this outcome, but really, did it surprise me? Not entirely. Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
It was the worst Ed McMahon I've ever heard.
Hi-oh!
Who was a better Walken, me or Dylan?
Oh, I want to hear yours again. Walking off.
I can't do it again.
It's a walking off. It's a walking off. Get it right.
Oh my god, I should have just stick to Gilbert Gottfried. You know, I guess I'm just a Roger Moore because the Roger Moore movies just don't bug me as much as it seems to bug everyone else. You know,
they bug me. But this one I actually liked.
Their childhood nostalgia for me, absolutely. Like they were some of my favorites as a kid because they were so colorful and ludicrous. And
yeah, I mean, I didn't end up liking Moonraker when we did it for the show, and that was the first Bond movie I had ever seen. Moonraker, but like the rest of these Moore movies just have not bugged me. You know, so. Anyway, great show, great trial, you two. Very well done.
Exactly.
Love it when we have two experts going mano-y-mano, ripping each other apart.
Lenzo. Andrew, what's been keeping you busy when you're not doing this show? What have you been up to lately?
Oh my goodness, I really don't write as much as I once did. I have a 7-year-old and that's changed life considerably. I must admit, I loved the little foreword that I read in a book recently where the author was thanking his wife and children, and he said, "Many thanks to my wife and daughters for ensuring that it took 2 years more to finish this book than it actually would have otherwise." But having said that, a few years ago squeezed out a book about Jaws: The Revenge, which I actually don't defend, but it's called The Shark Is Always There, if anyone wishes to sort of step to the side of Bond and go into another franchise. And, I mean, for me, a close look at A View to a Kill, written back in 2015. I must admit, until this show, I haven't gone back to read it because it's often the case with something you write. It's often very painful to go back and read it, but I was pleasantly surprised. So there you go. So yeah, that's really what I've been up to. I work for a not-for-profit organisation, and so I'm always doing more hours than I probably should on that.
Nice. And do you and the 7-year-old watch Bluey?
We do. Yes.
Love it.
We're big fans.
Your taxes bring us Bluey. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. You're really doing the world a service.
Yes, it's God's work. Now, Matt, it's been a minute since we've seen you. What have you been up to?
Well, I don't know. I've been thinking about going back and watching a Pulp Fiction so I can watch all the Christopher Walken movies again, you know? But
now that's an excellent Ed McMahon.
Yeah, I'm not even going to.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, you hit on a great point. How could I, a Bond lover, hit on this film? And I thought it'd be fun to become an internet troll and echo some of the arguments I hear out there. What I've been doing is preparing very hard for our October event. My wife, Janine Sherman, and I are leading another tour, this time of Jamaica. And we have 3 anniversaries coming up: 60th anniversary of the film Dr. No, 50th anniversary of the production of Live and Let Die, and 70th anniversary of the writing of the first Bond novel, Casino Royale. And we're going to have a ball and spend time with a full busload of people in Jamaica, going to all these places, Ian Fleming's
You go
world.
to Crab Key?
Live Time to Die.
Key?
You go to where?
You go to
Crab Key scares me plenty. Crab Key scares me plenty. A friend of mine went over there for seafood. The only trouble is he never came back again. And
they got dragons out there.
Believe it or not, I try to be proactive. And I actually spent this week working not on the Jamaica trip, which is in the can kind of, but on trips for Italy to visit No Time to Die locations in Matera and Venice, Moonraker, and all these wonderful films. And also simultaneously working on a Mexico City trip. My wife and I reconnoitered Mexico City, found dozens of locations from Spectre and License to Kill. And we're hoping to bring a group there maybe next year. So there's always a Bond trip to work on or a Bond book to review. I had a fun call today from a friend whose partner sings Bond cover songs and wants to cut a CD of Bond songs. Can I help? Ooh. Can I do liner notes? There's always something going on. But I don't want to leave without making a strong recommendation, full disclosure. Andrew's wonderful book is called James Bond in Our Sights, A Close Look at A View to a Kill. And I was so impressed with it, I asked him to write a foreword for a different edition. It's an amazing thesis and really clues you in on how View to a Kill prefigures Timothy Dalton, the Daniel Craig films. I thought I knew everything there was to know about A View to a Kill. It's one of my top 5 Bond films all the time. I love it. But Andrew's book was really insightful. He's being very modest. It's a great book. I urge you to get a copy. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your ongoing support there. That's been great.
Of course. And remember to give you those $20 later, although I don't want $20. I want US dollars, damn it.
US dollars only. None of those dollary dues.
Dollar bucks.
Now, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies you think people should see. Matt, I'll let you go first this time. What is a movie people should see?
I wanted to recommend something from my heart, and I love what I call what the heck sci-fi. So if you love what the heck sci-fi in the tradition of The Circle, The Platform, and the Cube movies, Other Life, 2017 theater that the Hollywood Reporter called, quote, a stylish piece of sci-fi pulp fiction made with a sense of scale that belies its indie budget. And actually, it looks a lot better than that. It looks glossy. But Other Life is about technology that saves money on prisons by capturing a prisoner's mind and making 1 minute of real time feel like days or even years in solitary. It's mind-bending, mind-blowing, and that relieves prisons of overcrowding until you turn the technology on the people who made it. Lots of cool twists and turns. Other Life is streaming on different services. It's a fabulous sci-fi thriller.
Oh, the DMV does that. Now, Andrew, do you have a recommendation for a movie that you think people should see?
Oh gosh, I have to sort of go through the memory banks. I mean, one that immediately comes to mind though is First Reformed with Ethan Hawke and directed by Paul Schrader, and sort of this mix of sort of climate change fears plus theology. It's a very interesting film, fairly sober one. You probably have to be in the right mood for it, but yeah, great stuff.
All right, cool, awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I liked First Reformed a lot.
Nice. Now, Big Ben, that's a good choice because you're next. What's your recommendation?
I know what you're thinking. Have we recommended 6 Clint Eastwood films or only 5? Well, I'm going to recommend another one with lawmen operating San Francisco, and that's Dirty Harry, of course. Well, it's certainly and perhaps admittedly problematic in its portrayal of how lawmen can operate in an overly bureaucratic system. Dirty Harry is still a fun film that transplants a Western sheriff into modern San Francisco, and it effortlessly combines the Westerns with the fear of the Zodiac Killer to create something that's very interesting to behold and a standout amongst the genre of cop films.
Yeah, how dirty is he really, though?
Well, they give him like 5 answers, so you'll have to watch the film and find out.
That is
I love the guy who plays the killer in that. That guy's such a good actor. His name escapes
He's
me,
in
though.
Cobra. He's great in Cobra. He's the boss in Cobra.
Well, he's in Hellraiser. He plays. He's in Deep Space Nine. The guy's excellent. Yeah.
Well,
Oh yeah, he was on
Schlender.
Deep Space Nine. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
Schlender.
Garrett.
Zoe,
Yes.
I
Debo
did not know
Schlender.
that.
What is your recommendation?
Ryan, what is best in life?
To have your enemies driven before you and hear the lamentation of their women.
What? No. What is best
Every
in life is watching Charlie Bronson movies. But
Oh,
a close
right.
second is watching Arnie movies. Ah, yes, my machismo knows no bounds. If only the listeners could see how hard I'm flexing right now. Anyway, Grace
Yeah.
Jones is strong and sexy, and I'm not intimidated by powerful women like Ben. So naturally, I'm going to recommend Conan the Destroyer. In this, we join Arnie on a magical quest to save a princess. It is a regular Mario the Barbarian. Come for the muscles, stay for the crazy lizard monster fight. If you ever wondered how Arnie would fight the Gorn, look no further. It is important to see every Arnie movie, even Red Sonja, even Red Heat. But this week, take time to watch Conan the Destroyer, streaming everywhere, but not for free.
I
For
like
the record, I'm intimidated of all women, not just the strong ones.
Oh, I love you, Ben.
5 points to Gryffindor.
That's great.
Rye Guy, what do you got for us?
My recommendation this week has nothing to do with James Bond,
I bet it
even though
does.
I've watched pretty much all 25 in the span of about 3 months, because we'll probably cover each and every goddamn one,
Gonna have
and
to
I
watch
will
them
save
again.
my thoughts.
Woo! All right.
Oh, yes, I love it.
Yes.
Instead, I want to recommend something that I saw in the theaters, a place you currently can't see it in, and that is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. It's about a shell with shoes on, a shell with shoes on named Marcel,
Mhm.
who lives alone with his grandmother in a house being rented out as an Airbnb before becoming an internet celebrity intent on finding his lost family. It's unfailingly sweet and intensely melancholy, so it goes without saying that I spent the entire last half hour wiping tears away from my face. Now, obviously, I'm an easy mark. See our episode on the Royal Tenenbaums for proof, but it's near the top of my favorite films of 2022 so far. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On isn't streaming as of my writing this recommendation, but it is an A24 production, so it should be on Amazon Prime or Hulu soon. Not that I
Probably
care
already
because
is.
I'll be buying it.
Now, Marcel is a French name, and some of the action in View to a Kill took place in Paris.
I like
There's-
it.
There's your connection.
So, Maynard, bring us home, baby. What are you recommending?
Now, our movie today threatened us with a real good time by promising the destruction of Silicon Valley. So I figured I'd recommend a movie that basically delivers on that promise, and that's San Francisco from 1936. It's sort of a musical, romantic disaster movie, starring Clark Gable as a saloon owner who hires a young singer, Jeanette MacDonald, and incidentally, they fall in love with each other, but things get complicated when she pursues her ambitions to sing at a more legitimate opera house, and also an earthquake destroys San Francisco. The earthquake is the main reason we're here. Sort of like Titanic, you have to sit through the entire gushy love story to get to it at the end, but it's worth it for the practical effects. Hydraulic lifters and shakers were used to violently rock and shake the set pieces, and the effect is flawless. This movie also landed Spencer Tracy his first of 9 Best Actor nominations, so there's a plus. San Francisco is currently streaming on Hulu, but only with the live TV subscription, those sons of bitches.
Wait, what? The movie's from the 30s.
Wait a second. The entire movie is shaken, not stirred. I'm in.
There you see. There's the tie-in. Well, the romantic subplot will stir you. Absolutely. Will leave you stirred.
Arrgh.
You mentioned Spencer Tracy's nomination. Did he ever win for anyone?
Yes, he won twice, 2 years in a row. I think
You only win twice.
You only win twice. They say that. But yeah, I think Tracer was the first guy to ever win two Best Actors. So yeah, he wins for 2. I can't remember
Well
which ones they were.
deserved. He's great.
But he did. It happened. It's true. And
I
now
believe it.
you know the rest of the story. But with that, we're all out of show. But we want to thank our guests, Matt Sherman and Andrew McNess, for joining us. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate you guys doing this case so that we didn't have to do anything and we had the whole week off. It was a big plus. We'll have you both back. Andrew, you're going to have to come back and defend Jaws the Revenge.
100%.
I know that
Doug,
you. I know that you said you didn't defend it, but you'll have to. Fine, come prosecute it. I'll defend it. It's got a shark, doesn't it? I can defend it. You come prosecute it. I'll defend it all day. But we hope to have you back, and we hope everyone else will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Down it.
Didn't think of anything.
What? What do you mean you can't think of anything? Could have said Walken.
More cowbell or something.
Nothing.
All right.
Just nothing.
Man.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.